turn this on.
All right, I'm now recording. So, like I said, today I'm going to be doing a Breath of the Wild Ganondorf versus Zelda, or is it Ganondorf versus Link rather? Right? Everybody gets that character confused. So.
Yeah, I sometimes too get them mixed up.
So, basically, I want to come in and I'm using a pose from a David Finch piece to kind of get my figure reference straight away. And I just want to kind of roughly establish where I'm going to place Link, right, and where I'm going to place Ganon. Ganon's going to be pretty massive. And today, mainly what I'm doing is I'm going to be focusing on just getting the construction lines in there whenever, and I tell you guys, right, I tell you and Jonathan all the time, what you want to do is, you know, when you're doing these things, you want to get the basic shapes first. And then, you know, after you've gotten the basic shapes, then you can sweat the small stuff like the details. Kind of fine on wireframe, so I got my trapezoid for my chest, got my circle for the top of my skull here, circle for the top of my skull here for Link. And we're seeing a lot of his, you know, he's got sort of a side profile going on, kind of jutting his jaw out a little bit. Make sure that I'm keeping the heads in proportion to each other, but I'm basically coming in and finding that skull, and I kind of do like to find the facial profile. I come in and I do like this ski mask shape over the lower jaw, right? And then from there I can kind of come in later on and cut out the nose and all that stuff, cut out the jaw. But I also want to try to indicate the underside of this neck, and I also want to sort of get that Adam's apple in there right away, get the cylindrical shape of the neck. Link's pretty slim character, so and I'm going to change this up because I don't want to run out of room. What I want to do is just sort of guesstimate, you know, these traps, right? Traps are triangles. They never go in like this. The traps always kind of come over like this. So I want to try to get a little bit of that curving downward motion, you know, into my traps here. And then I'm coming in and I'm doing an oval as a placeholder for the arm, and then coming in and getting my basic construction lines in for this arm, which is going to be foreshortened. Probably gonna have this will be I imagine this will be his shield. This will probably be all covered by his shield or whatever, his Hylian shield.
Yeah.
You may see a little bit of his hand coming up through there, but I don't want to cover up the body just yet. I want to continue to kind of mass in, draw both Ganon and Link at the same time. So I do an egg for the rib cage for Ganon, maybe make that a little bigger, come in and do a smaller egg for those hips, and then again for here, come in. And we have, let's kink this shoulder up a little, beef it out. wireframe this. One thing I want to do is really quickly establish a gesture line for link, since I have such a nice gesture line for GANON. And let me just zoom out of my reference here. And really, I want to try to minimize the amount of straight lines, right? When you're doing a figure, you want to not really have that many straight lines. Come in, get a V shape for the hips, and also sort of get that underplane, draw through your shapes, and establish that axis point. So there's sort of some perspective points going on in this figure. I can break the geometry up quite a bit if I want. That let's push that over a little bit. This is going to be kinked over a little. All right. I'm actually looking at this. I think I might change it up a little bit. Do a slightly different pose. Find this leg first. There we go. That's more like it. Let's make that a little more dynamic. Still coming in and finding my basic shapes, but I'm pushing the stance a little bit, pushing the space. And then before I go any further with this, again, in the spirit of drawing both, you know, Link and GANON at the same time, first I just want to come in and get his knee here. And maybe I want to actually push the knee up. Just want to make sure that the pose is looking natural. I spend a lot of time in the rough stages because once you start laying in details, it gets harder to undo stuff. So in. Get both pieces of the knee there. Let's look at it from upside down. It's looking pretty good. Using my drafting eraser to clean up my line work a little bit so I can kind of see where I'm coming, see where I'm going. But basically, still very much coming in. And now in the reference, his arm is swinging down like this. So I'm going to make his arm swinging down, but I'm going to have him holding the master sword like this. And I'll probably have this arm cut off.
Yeah. Yeah. It's out of all his sword in a game. That's my favorite one, the master.
Oh, you know, the master sword's, it's iconic. It's super iconic, right?
Yeah.
So I rather like this figure as is, right? I've got a nice gesture. I'm not tightening up too much. You want to keep it nice and loose. No real straight lines. It cuts a nice silhouette as you're doing these shapes and fitting these shapes together. Like I'm fitting this V shape into this donut shape, right? And then I'm fitting like my trapezoid in there, fitting the cylinders for my legs. Like I can draw over the surface of each of these shapes and through each of these shapes, and they make sense, right? So you want to think about it. I'm also being cognizant of the scale and perspective. So my head is going to be shrinking a little as we are trying to achieve that, you know, upshot, that worm's eye or quasi worm's eye view, but there's not going to be too much warping of scale here because it's a very slight sort of worm's eye view, and you want to be aware that 8 heads tall. Sometimes what you can do, if this was a little smaller, I would draw an 8 heads tall prone figure or grid, and then I would tilt the figure right from that prone grid so I could get the exact sort of height for the heads. But in this case, because of the scale, you know, we want to try to edit that process a little bit so that we're not spending undue amounts of time getting that grid in there. But it can help. You also want to really be aware of the feet and hands you can typically think of as triangles. So now that I have this figure nailed in, I want to scooch back over to Ganon before I finish this arm, because I really want to come in and make sure that I am doing my due diligence with Ganon here. Now, Ganon is pretty, the reference that I have, it's a Venom, picture of Venom, and he's pretty monstrous in the picture, so I'm going to scale him back a little bit. Ganon's a pretty big dude, though. I figure he's always been a very big, a very big guy. Drawn with his sword coming out like that. Maybe he's got like a fist. Maybe he's got 2 blades or something. Still want to keep it very loose. I can always go back and ink this later. Get my guide lines in there, my construction lines. And the height of the head, right, should be roughly that height of the chest, so I could come in here and push that chest down if I wanted. I could also come in here, sort of push this chest down a little bit too, so that it aligns correct. He's kinking his head pretty much, he's hunched over, so his head's coming over that, you know, and his neck is going to have a lot of foreshortening going on. We're going to see a lot of the trap here in shadow. The clavicle is going to be compressed quite a bit as well. And the forearms, right? Our arms are going to be way foreshortened. Come in here, and what I'm doing is I'm just, you know, massing in the basic shapes of the hand. We haven't brandishing two weapons. This hand is a little bit more closer to us, so it appears bigger in space. But essentially, we're just getting, you know, you're still kind of just, you want to get that elbow in there. You want to give your characters elbows too. That's something that I did not do early on. So got that thus far. Looking pretty sweet, I might say. And then from here, I just want to come in, get the hip area. And you'll notice I don't go into the details of one character till I've got both characters sort of sorted. I think that's the best, the absolute best way to do it, to be honest. Just want to get my kneaded eraser and use this guy right here. And I don't want to get stuck in the weeds, which is what's happening a little bit right now. So what I'm going to do is just kind of not stress it. There we go. That looks more like it. A lot of this will be lost in shadow, and of course I have my rib cages already masked in. So I'm just coming in and just trying to get some of the basic construction lines for the anatomy, but I'm not stressing anything too much. A lot of this is going to be sort of covered up by clothing and armor and whatnot. And then I want to give them, again, a kind of a dramatic wide stance here. So whenever a leg is load bearing, the muscles are going to flare out a little bit. And I've already made Ganon like super massive here. You can draw through the shapes at this point to help you more accurately get certain features. Could throw this leg in. Maybe that leg is under, this leg is bent, so this calf is going to be underneath his thigh, right?
Yeah.
Let's bring the hip line down. And in a few minutes, what we'll do is I'll stop this recording. And we'll pick this up. Just want to get basically today construction lines. And the feet you can think of again as triangles. And what's cool is with someone like Ganon, you can kind of get away with like making him like really monstrous, and you can really play with the proportions of the character. Another thing I like to do is like mirror test this, so I'm just gonna mirror test this really quick. And when I do that, I see a little bit of wonkiness, more so more so in Ganon. And that's why you don't want to go and do the details right away, because really it's really easy for asymmetry and wonkiness to creep in, so you want to keep it as loose as possible until you've had a chance to kind of really nail down the silhouette, and then you can plug your shapes in from there. And usually when you start out with basic shapes, you get your silhouette pretty close, but you don't want to be too cavalier with, you know, going right into details. Let me just get this arm here in, and then I'll stop the share real quick, because we're about at the top of the hour, so we're right on time. And we'll go from there. And I'm just going to keep it fairly loose. I'm actually looking at it on my tablet as I complete this from far away to see how it's checking out. You want to also look at your work from upside down. Right, make sure that not missing anything there. Lay in that rib cage, and when I lay in that rib cage, my elbow is just about where I want it to be. And again, I used a reference from, it was a David Finch Venomverse Spider-Man's commission for the pose, just to help me nail down those particular pose. But I'm going to be doing, I changed it up slightly, right? So a little more cut off on the side. I'm going to have the shield here, and then Ganon a little more front and center. Standing, I've scaled back his proportions a little bit, but that's basically it, right? That's the beginning stages. Probably end up recording a part 2 of this. Let me just finish this hand real quick. And again, same deal. I'm just kind of coming in. So he's got like, I imagine he has like 2 nasty looking knives or something.
Yeah.
And he's in his Gerudo armor, you know, that crazy desert armor that he has.
Yeah.
He's just getting ready to do some damage on Link here. Poor Link. It's like a shrimp compared to Ganon.
Yeah.
Ganon doesn't skip arm day. But yeah, I mean, you know, and this is the same method I teach you and Jonathan, right? You start with the basic shapes and you take your time. Just really want to take your time. You don't want to rush it because then people want to jump right to the details. I see a little bit of asymmetry right in here where I laid it in the line for his abs. So I'm going to probably like adjust this in here. But like that's why you want to keep it in the rough stages, because the longer you look at it in the rough stage, again, the more asymmetry you're going to see. And then right at the end, at the very last second, is when you're adding all that detail. And you want to try to draw both figures at once. So you do all of them in the rough stage first, then all of them in the sort of middle stage, and then again, final pencils. Then you're going in, and then at that point you can ink one, ink the other, but it helps to maybe get both faces done first and then both torsos. You know, switch back and forth, and you're ping-ponging between the two figures constantly. You're never drawing one figure and then drawing another figure. Because if you do that, they're gonna look disjointed. They're not gonna interact in like they're not going to be interacting in a convincing way with each other. In fact, just right while we're down here, we might as well throw in the placeholder for this foot as well. So and then are you doing a few multiple figure pieces in your series, Theresa, either for the Egyptian series or
I am, besides the ones based on their god and goddesses, there were a couple that I'm gonna redo in that style also. The second version.
Yeah, cool. Take this in a little bit.
Which I will go back to after I redo two of these old ones. I possibly might go back to it after that.
Nice. I feel like his legs should be a little longer. The other thing, another mistake, people either draw the legs too long or too short, and again, that just comes with like getting used to seeing that 8 heads sort of template in your mind's eye as you're working, and it takes time, but it's beneficial to sort of get used to that way of working. Come in. Let's just throw it in here. Not bad. Looks pretty good to my eye. All right, and that's part 1. So I'm just going to stop the recording.